Tonight, we slip into the shadowed world of the medieval executioner, a man feared, hated, and desperately needed. By day, you walk the streets under cold stares. By night, you wrestle with the blood on your hands and the weight on your soul. No one speaks to you unless they must. No one trusts you, yet they all rely on your blade. Stay with me as we explore this grim life, strike by strike, whisper by whisper. If this story stirs something in you, quietly tap like, leave a thoughtful comment, and subscribe for more sleep-bound journeys. Rest now. The axe falls soon. You stand in the cold square, axe in hand, pretending the shaking in your wrists is from the chill. But you know better. It's not the weather. It's the knowledge that this morning you are going to kill a man and everyone will watch. They've gathered like it's a feast day. Mothers with children on their hips. Old men with their hands folded, like they're waiting for church bells. You don't look them in the eye. You can't. You look at your boots, wet from dew and dust, and you wonder if your father felt this way when he first raised the axe. You were told he did. He never spoke of it. You never dared ask. But now it's your turn. You're no longer just the butcher's son or the executioner's apprentice. You are the instrument of justice. And the man on his knees, eyes wild, lips cracked, breath shorted depending on you to do it clean, to make it fast. The priest has said his prayer. The town clerk has nodded. And now there's nothing left but the silence that comes before steel. The axe is heavier than you remember. Maybe it's the air, or maybe it's the finality of it. You drag it forward, both hands sweating inside the leather gloves. The condemned man is trembling, his neck bared above the chopping block, body twitching like a dying fish. You want to believe he's guilty. You pray he is. But you weren't at his trial. You didn't see the theft. You only know what they told you. And still, you feel a strange bond with him. Two bodies trembling on the same stage. Two hearts trying not to betray themselves. His lips are moving prayer or plea, you can't tell. You think for a moment about sparing him, walking away, tossing the axe into the crowd like a torch into a haystack. But then you remember, it's your duty. If not you, then someone worse. You kneel beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. It's the first time you've touched someone who knows they're about to die. He looks at you, and in that instant, something unspoken passes between you. You blink it away and raise the axe. There is no silence, like the moment before a head is severed. The world seems to pause, wind holds its breath, birds stop mid-flight, even your own blood seems to wait. Then comes the swing. Your muscles tighten, spine curves, your shoulders follow through. The blade makes a noise you will never forget, not quite a thud, not quite a crunch, but something organic. It doesn't come off clean. You miss the exact spot by inches. There is a spray. A groan. You have to strike again. And again. By the third blow, the crowd has grown quiet. Even the children aren't laughing now. The fourth swing finally severs it, and the body slumps like a sack of flour while the head rolls a few inches to the side. You step back, panting, blood running in a fine arc down your sleeve. You try not to look at what you've made of the man's neck, but the image will carve itself behind your eyelids for years. Later that night, your tunic still stained, you sit alone in the corner of your father's hut. He says nothing, just pours you a cup of something sharp and brown and bitter. You drink it in one go. It doesn't help. The fire flickers. A dog howls in the distance. Somewhere outside, the town celebrates. They always do after a public hanging or beheading. It affirms their belief that justice works, that the world is safe, that evil has a face and it can be cut from the neck. But you know better now. Evil doesn't look like a man with torn sleeves and cracked lips. It looks like the handle of an axe in your hands. You can't eat. You can't sleep. You sit there while the stars turn in the sky and wonder if this is what dying feels like, except slower, stretched over the rest of your life. By morning, the nausea hasn't passed. You haven't washed. You avoid the mirror. When your father asks if you're ready for the next one, you don't answer. You just nod. You realize it's not the killing that's hardest. It's the knowing you'll do it again. And again. That the people will keep coming. The heads will keep falling. And you, barely more than a boy, are expected to carry it all like a man. When you step outside, some villagers glance your way. Not with thanks. Not even with fear. But with something colder recognition. You are no longer one of them. You are marked now. A line has been drawn in your soul and theirs, and it can't be crossed again. The following nights are worse. Not because of nightmares, those haven't come yet, but because sleep itself feels wrong. When you lie on your back, the phantom weight of the axe presses against your hands. You keep hearing that wet crack of the blade on bone. You start to hear it in the snap of twigs, in the clink of spoons. The sound finds you. It lingers. And when you close your eyes, you see the man's face just before the axe dropped. Not angry, not scared, just tired. So terribly tired. As if he had seen it all coming long before you did. And now you understand why your father never talked about his first kill. Why the old executioners drink before breakfast and stare at nothing for hours. It's not the blood that stains you. It's the silence. The unbearable silence after it's done. You begin to dread the moments in between executions. Not the moments before or after, but the long stretches of days when no one is condemned. Because then, you are left alone with the weight. There is no rope to tie. No axe to sharpen. No voice to silence. Only memory. Only guilt. You start to question the faces of the guilty. Did they deserve it? Could someone else have taken their place? What if you were wrong? But you remind yourself it is not your job to judgingly to end. That's what they always told you. But saying it doesn't make it easier. It just makes you quieter, more detached. You find yourself laughing less, eating less. The world dulls itself to match your insides. And yet, when the next sentence is passed and the town bell tolls, you rise before dawn. You prepare the tools. You kneel to pray, even if you no longer believe anyone listens. And you make your way to the scaffold, where the crowd waits once more. Each face is different, but each expression the same. Curiosity, anticipation, hunger. They don't want to admit it, but you know they are waiting for the moment the head falls. And you, the silent hand of the law, will give them what they came for. But you've changed. You know now that your first execution wasn't just a moment. It was a door. And once you stepped through, there was no going back. You were never supposed to be this. Not in your dreams, not in your youth. You wanted to be a stonemason like your uncle, or a miller maybe. Something with rhythm, something with dignity. But fate, or perhaps something less romantic, like debt or legacy, had other plans. The truth is, no one chooses to become an executioner. It's a job that finds you, like mold creeping into a corner of the home. Your father did it, and his father before him. The role clings to bloodlines. People pretend not to see you until they need you. The moment a man is sentenced, suddenly you're remembered, summoned. But no one asks if you're ready. No one asks if you're willing. You're not. You never were. But the village must have its justice. And someone must swing the axe. At first, you thought the villagers feared you. That was easier to stomach. But you've learnt it isn't fear, it's disdain, wrapped in silence. You pass a baker, and he pauses his kneading. A child hides behind her mother's skirt. Even the dogs seem to growl differently when you walk by. They call you sir only when your back is turned. Otherwise, it's him, that one, or worse, nothing at all. You are a void in their conversations. At weddings and wakes, your name is skipped like a skipped stone. There are no toasts in your honour, no stories where you are the hero. The best they'll give you is space and the kind of quiet that rots the heart. And still, when the next sentence is read aloud in the town square, they look for you, needing the very hand they cannot bear to acknowledge. There was a time when executioners were chosen from the dregs criminals offered pardon in exchange for steel work. But that was before your time. Now, in your town, it's an inherited shame, passed like a sword in the dark. You remember when you first heard the whispers. He'll take over, they said, when you were barely 9. His father will teach him. You didn't understand what it meant, not fully. You just knew that other children didn't want to play with you. You brought something to the game they couldn't name. Something cold. By the time you understood what your inheritance really was, it was already too late. You had swung your first training blade, knelt beside the scaffold to learn how not to flinch, learned the rhythm of a clean drop. your life had already been shaped like the arc of an axe. What no one talks about is the guilt that sits inside this duty, the contradiction. You are not a criminal. You obey the law. And yet, you kill. Legally, yes, but does that make it moral? You ask this to yourself, late into the night when the fire's gone low, and your hands still remember the twitch of a dying man's final breath. You wonder if the priests pray for your soul when they speak of sin. You wonder if God turns away when you close your eyes. And in those moments, you realize this is not a job you hold. It is a weight that holds you, a sentence all its own. The condemned die once. You die with every swing, quietly, inwardly, slowly. But for all its horror, you do not get to complain. That's the strangest cruelty of it. Because when someone must be punished, they call you the necessary evil. When the gallows must be raised, you are the skilled one. And for those moments, you are not invisible. You are essential. The law bends through you. The village needs you. The magistrate nods. The crowd hushes. You are, briefly, seen. And maybe that's what keeps you tethered those fleeting seconds when your presence is acknowledged, even if only to deliver death. It's a twisted intimacy, a bond made in blood and silence. It's not fame. It's not respect. But it's something. And something is better than the emptiness of being unwanted, unseen. Sometimes, a traveller or a drunk will ask, "Why don't you just stop?" As if it were a simple thing. As if you could just hang the axe on the wall and vanish into a new life. But you know better. Executioners don't get second chances. If you walked into another town, they'd ask your trade. And once they knew, doors would close. So you stay. You sharpen your blades. You tend your little garden. You walk the same dirt paths, the same winding alleys, waiting for the next call. You tell yourself you are protecting others by doing this work. You imagine the condemned as monsters, as beasts, as people already lost. But that lie wears thin, especially when the condemned looks like you. Young, poor, human, and still the axe falls, because someone has to do it. And then there's the irony. For all the disdain, you are cleaner in your conscience than many. You kill, yes, but you don't lie. You don't steal. You don't betray. You don't hide in cloaks of politics or scrolls of scripture. Your justice is final, brutal, visible. It is what it is. And yet, it is you they whisper about. You they keep at arm's length. Not the merchant who cheats his weights. Not the priest who touches wine more than souls. Only youth the man who bears the blade but not the mask. You find a strange dignity in that. Twisted, yes. Lonely, certainly. But it's the only dignity they've left you, and so you cling to it like a last prayer. In time, your movements become practiced. you stop shaking. You stop asking questions, at least out loud. You rise early, polish your tools, and when the sentence comes, you nod without emotion. But inside, something still shifts. Like sand under a standing stone. Not all at once, but gradually. A slow erosion of the self. And one day, you will realize that your laughter has changed. It comes more rarely now. When it does come, it's quieter, tinged with sorrow. You see things others don't, thou. Death clings to the corners of daily life. How fragile it all is. You become not just the executioner of men, but of illusions. Illusions of justice, of safety, of goodness. You don't mean to, but it happens. Because when your hands know the weight of a human head, it changes the way you see everything else. Your tools are kept in a chest beneath the floorboard shidden. Not from shame, but from moisture, from rust, from the careless hands of curious strangers. You keep them clean, sharp, oiled with animal fat and beeswax. They are not weapons, not really. They are extensions of purpose, of judgment, of you. The axe is your oldest companion, broad-bladed, darkened at the edges, the wood of its shaft smooth from years of palms and pain. It has no name, but it might as well. You know the feel of its balance, the way it breathes in your grip. It doesn't sing. It waits. Heavy. Patient. Silent. You don't fear it. You fear what it makes you do. And still, you run a whetstone across its edge with something close to tenderness. Then there is the ropeless, intimate, more theatrical. Ropes are never reused. Once they've carried death, they carry a stink of it. You coil them carefully after each hanging, then burn them in the yard at dusk, alone. No one ever joins you for the burning. The smoke climbs up like a crooked prayer. You've learned to tie every knot a man can imagine. Nooses that tighten with the weight of breath. Knots that fail if your hands tremble. You've watched the bodies drop like sacks of grain, watched the last kick of a life trying to run away. Sometimes they snap clean. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes the neck holds, and the man dances in the air far too long. Those are the worst. The crowd never knows where to look, but you can't look away. Fire is the cruelest tool. It pretends to be cleansing, divine, ordained. The crowd treats it like a lesson. Burning is rare, saved for those declared heretic, witch, or unholy in some whispered way. But you know it's not divine. It's personal. Punishment through spectacle. You've lit those pyres yourself, felt the heat press against your face, heard the screams that clawed through smoke. The worst part is the waiting fire kills slow. You never watch the whole thing. You can't. You leave before the bones show, before the skull cracks like old porcelain. And yet the scent follows you home, clings to your sleeves. You wake with the taste of ash in your throat, even days later. Your belt holds smaller tools. a thin knife for finishing work, a set of iron tongs, a dagger once used to sever tongues. These you almost never use, but you keep them sharp all the same. Not out of fear of needing them, unprepared. You imagine one day standing over a man who refuses to die as expected, whose life clings to the bone like sap to bark, and you having nothing ready but trembling hands. That cannot happen. So you prepare, you clean, you test the weight, you close the latch of the chest with a sound that echoes louder than it should. Sometimes, in the quietest moments, you wonder if these tools dream. If the axe remembers each spine, if the rope mourns each twist of air, you give them no names, but you treat them with reverence. Not like friends more, like ghosts you've decided to live with. They are the only things that understand the rhythm of your life. Every town has its church. Every priest has his scripture. You have your iron, your wood, your fire. You don't worship them, but they are part of your prayers in their way. Over time, they start to change in your mind. They are no longer instruments of justice, they are instruments of survival. Without them, you are no one, not even feared, not even hated, just unneeded, and that terrifies you more than blood. So you maintain them like a ritual. You oil the hinges of the gallows. You sweep the stones around the pyre pit. You replace splinters in the scaffold rail. You've begun to talk to the axe in silence. Just once you whispered, "Be kind today." You're not sure why. But in your chest, you felt something soften. Or maybe it broke. When the town upgrades your block of cleaner oak, less splintered, you carry the old one out yourself. You bury it like a body. Dig deep. No one asks where it went. No one thanks you. You wrap it in a sheet and lower it in like it had a soul. And maybe, by then, you believe it did. You place a single rock atop the grave. Not to mark it, just so you'll remember the weight. You walk back with a strange emptiness. You did not expect to mourn wood, but you do. That's how deep this has gone. That's how much your tools have fused into your being. And the strangest thing? The tools never lie. Unlike people, unlike judges or clerks or townsfolk with their squinting eyes and wagging tongues, the axe never lies about what it will do. The rope never lies about how tightly it will hold. The fire never hides its hunger. They are honest, brutal companions. And in that brutal honesty, you find a kind of peace, a kind of twisted trust. You have built your world on it, a world of sharpened silence and honest cruelty. And no one, not even the priest, knows what that kind of intimacy does to a man. Your house stands at the edge of everything just past the last cobbled lane, where the woods begin and the fog rests like an old dog across the fields. No one lives nearby. No one wants to. The village says it's for your peace. Privacy, they call it. A kindness. But you know the truth. It's distance. It's exile in soft disguise. Even the path to your front door is different, narrow, overgrown, pressed down only by your own boots. You built the home yourself, with your father's calloused plans and your own younger hands. Stone, wood, ash. It's not a sad place, but it carries the same hush as a graveyard. You hear birds, yes, but not laughter, not footfall, not welcome. You live in the quiet, not by choice, but by unwritten law. No one ever knocks. If they need you, they leave, parchment creased and damp from morning misten, a nail by your gate. They don't cross the threshold. Children dare each other to touch the fence. Sometimes they do, and you hear their squeals echo down the hill, like ghosts of joy you're not allowed to have. You've grown used to the emptiness. Even the silence has a pattern now. The wind passes through your chimney at night in a low moan. The floorboards speak in old voices. You try not to name them. The loneliness is no longer pain, it is simply the wallpaper of your life. You keep a garden behind the house. Cabbage, onions, a few beans. The soil here is stubborn, but it listens to you better than people ever have. You dig deep, work slow, talk to the plants when no one's near. It's the one place where your hands aren't taken up with death. You think perhaps that if you weren't marked for the scaffold, you could have been a farmer, someone who grows instead of ends. But fate's strange that way. Some hands sow, others sever. You don't question it anymore. The carrots come in crooked, the tomatoes sour, but they are yours. And in their clumsy ripeness, you find a thread of purpose that has nothing to do with gallows or gore. Inside the house, everything is in its place. You have little, but you care for it. A table worn smooth by elbows. A chair you carved yourself. A blanket that still smells faintly of your mother's soap, though she's been gone 10 years. In one corner, a kettle always waits. You've made tea for visitors who never came. You still light a second candle at supper. Habit, maybe. Or hope. Sometimes, after the executions, you come home and scrub the floor even if it's clean. Not because of the blood, it never reaches your house, but because your spirit feels unclean, like soot clinging to a white wall. The ritual of cleaning becomes its own prayer. A prayer that perhaps the world has not completely turned its face away from you. And still, the village needs you. They look away, but they need you. You see it in how they avoid your eyes, but listen for your footsteps when sentencing day comes. You catch glimpses of yourself in their expressions: conflict, disgust, dependence. They want their justice clean, but not close. They want the condemned gone, but not by hands they must see at market. So they push you to the edge. A safe distance. A convenient purgatory. And in that space, you learn how to be invisible. You walk with your head down, hands folded, cloak drawn. You learn to step around crowds instead of through them. You stop attending festivals. You stop answering greetings. Until one day you realize you've become what they always believed you were. A shadow, a necessary void. And when sickness comes, because it always does, you suffer in solitude. No healer will cross your door. No neighbour brings broth. You tend your own fever. You stitch your own wounds. You bury your own dead. Even grief must be self-made, self-managed. When your dog died in the winter, you dug the hole through frozen earth yourself, your tears steaming against your cheeks. No one asked where he went. No one noticed the absence. And you understood, then, that your life would be filled with silent departures, silent aches. And still, you remained. Not because you were brave, but because leaving meant admitting defeat. And you've made too many endings already to allow one more. The loneliness does strange things to time. The days blur. The seasons pass in monochrome. You mark the months not by harvests or holidays, but by the number of executions. 7 heads this year. 4 burnings. 2 who begged. 1 who sang. You don't remember their names anymore. You remember their eyes. And sometimes you think you see them in the village crowd, standing whole and alive. A trick of the light. A quirk of memory. Or maybe a punishment. Whatever it is, it keeps you tethered to the outskirts. You stop hoping for change. You accept the role. You become the edge. And the edge becomes you. And yet, in rare moments, the world forgets to exclude you. A child waves, not knowing who you are. A merchant nods, distracted by thought. A stranger offers bread without fear. And those seconds are like warmth through frostbitten fingers. They don't last, but they remind you that you are still human. That beneath the stain of your profession, something kind still flickers. A candle never fully snuffed out. You carry that flicker like a secret. You don't fan it. You don't name it. But on nights when the wind is still and the fire burns low, you feel it quietly glowing inside you. And that's enough to rise again tomorrow. You didn't choose the clothes. They chose you. Handed down like a burden, stitched in silence by someone who didn't want to be thanked. The first time you put them on, you stood in front of the mirror for a long time. The black fabric, coarse and stiff at the seams. The hood, with its slits for eyes that made the world feel narrower. It didn't feel like armor. It felt like erasure. As if the moment you laced up the boots and pulled the hood over your face, you stopped being someone and became something. A figure, a symbol, a warning. You remember how it scratched your neck, how the smell of dust clung to the cloth like old breath. You looked like death itself, and maybe that was the point. It's easier to kill when they can't see your eyes. It's easier to hate a mask than a man. There were others, long ago, who wore bright colours, reds, yellows, flamboyant sashes, to emphasize the spectacle of punishment. But that was before shame grew its roots deep into the job. Now, black is expected. Somber, muted, invisible. You are not allowed flair. You are not allowed personality. The costume is not meant to express, it's meant to suppress. It tells the crowd what they want to believe. That justice is not personal, that the blade is not guided by emotion. But you know better. You know the weight behind the fabric. You know that beneath this shroud is a body that sweats, a heart that races, a man who still dreams 7 if he doesn't want to. You wear the costume not to become someone else, but to survive being yourself. The hood is the worst part. You used to think it would protect you. Hide your face, keep your identity safe. But masks have a way of seeping inward. Over time, you feel it closing in, pressing against your skin even when you're not wearing it. You begin to speak less. Look down more. You flinch when people say your name, as if they're reaching past the mask into something raw and soft. And eventually, you realize the costume hasn't hidden you, it's transformed you. You walk differently now. Slower. Heavier. As if you carry something more than just cloth. As if the weight of the hood has sunk into your bones. And when you pass a mirror, hoodless and alone, you startle. Because the face looking back doesn't feel like yours anymore. The townsfolk pretend they don't know who you are, but they always know. The costume may obscure your features during the execution, but no amount of fabric hides a gait, a build, a silhouette repeated over years. They may not say it aloud, but they recognize the way your coat hangs, the way your shoulders slope. You see it in their eyes, the flicker of realization, followed by the retreat of politeness. The costume follows you even when folded in a chest, even when buried beneath clean clothes. You are the executioner even in linen, even in sleep, even in prayer. You carry it the way a sinner carries confession. Secret, but permanent. Sometimes you try to dress like them. You wash your hands. Comb your hair. Wear soft cotton instead of wool. You walk to the square, not as a hangman, but as a man. And for a moment, you almost feel normal. Until someone passes you and mutters, "That's him," no name, no greeting, just a label, a scar placed upon your back by people who've never seen you smile. You understand now why executioners of old wore bells around their waists. To announce their approach, not as a warning, but as surrender. Yes, I am he. Make way. I do not pretend to be welcome. You've kept every piece of your costume over the years. Even when a thread snaps, even when a patch fades. You don't know why. Maybe out of duty. Maybe because you've lost so much else that the fabric feels like a memory you can still hold. They hang in the corner of your hut, like ghost sleeves sagging, hood collapsed like a head bowed in shame. You don't touch them unless you must. But you don't throw them away either. You know one day they'll outlast you. And maybe that's fitting. The costume will wait for the next soul to wear it. Another name buried beneath black cloth. And here's the strangest part: there are times, brief and guilt-ridden, when the costume feels like safety. When you slip it on, you disappear. No more aching heart, no more memories. Just the ritual, the performance. You become part of something larger. A system, a tradition. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to justify. You just act. And in a life filled with uncertainty, that consistency can feel like a mercy. Like standing on solid ground in a world of shifting sand. It's a dangerous comfort. But comfort all the same. You wonder if priests feel the same about their robes. Still, when you undress, when the cloth falls away and the room breathes again, you always take a moment. You sit by the fire. You unclench your hands. And you remember the warmth of a childhood cloak your mother once stitched. The blue one, with the mismatched buttons. The one that smelled like time and rain. And you realize this black thing you wear, it's the opposite of that. It doesn't carry love. It carries endings. And as you fold it, slowly, carefully, you say nothing. Because there's nothing left to say. Only a silence heavy with thread. The gallows is older than you. It stands like a forgotten altar at the edge of the square, where the cobblestones turn to dirt and the whispers get quieter. The wood groans with age, but it does not break. You check it, often hammer loose planks back into place, sand the edges where splinters threaten to betray their age. The trapdoor sticks in winter. The hinges rust in the rain. You oil them with careful hands, as if tending to a sacred machine. Because in a way, that's what it is. A device not for killing, but for delivering finality. It's not the fall that kills. Not really. It's the silence after. You've heard that silence more times than you can count. It changes shape with every hanging. Sometimes sharp, sometimes soft, but always there. Always waiting. Each hanging begins long before the crowd arrives. You wake early, wash your face in cold water, tie your apron. The scaffold must be swept, the rope inspected. No room for error. A knot too loose, and the condemned will suffer. A trapdoor that catches, and the drop won't break the neck. That's not just a mistake. It's a cruelty. One, you'll be judged for them if they won't say it aloud. You walk the perimeter with slow steps, listening for creaks. You run your fingers along the edge of the beam like a carpenter searching for flaws. This work isn't about death. It's about detail, precision, and the quiet knowledge that if you get it wrong, it's a soul that pays for your fatigue. The rope must be fresh, sturdy, but not too stiff. You measure it carefully. Height, weight, length of drop all must be calculated. You know the formula by heart. You've done it in your sleep. The first time you failed, the man choked for minutes, his feet twitching like leaves in wind. You never forgot. Now you check 3 times. 4. You tie the noose with a kind of grim grace, like a sailor preparing for storm. 13 turns. The hangman's knot is not just for show, it controls the twist, the snap, the end. You loop it slowly, your fingers moving as if they've always known this rhythm. And when it's done, you pull the rope tight, hear the wooden beam moan above. That sound, it never gets easier, but it becomes familiar, like thunder, or a closing door. The scaffold creaks when you walk it. Not loud, not alarming. Just a reminder that this place is alive in its own way. You've memorized its sounds, the hollow knock beneath your boots, the stiff groan of the lever, the breath of wind that slips between boards. You once thought of repairing every noise, tightening every bolt. But now you know, the creaks are part of the ritual. They speak of history, of repetition. Every sound has held dozens of final steps, dozens of final words. When you kneel to adjust the trapdoor latch, you feel the history beneath your knees. It isn't ghosts that haunt this place. It's memory pressed into timber, deep, permanent. When the condemned ascends the steps, you walk beside them, not in front, not behind. You do not push. You do not pull. You guide. Always silent. Always measured. Some cry. Some curse. Some collapse and must be carried. You've seen every kind of fear. It no longer surprises you. What does surprise you is calm when a man walks without trembling, when his eyes are steady, when his final breath is taken before the rope ever touches his throat. Those are the ones that stay with you longest. The brave ones, the broken ones, the innocent ones. You wish you didn't believe in innocence anymore. It would make the rope easier to hold. You never speak during a hanging. It's not your place. The priest speaks. The magistrate declares. The crowd murmurs. You work. You place the rope. You step back. You wait. Your fingers twitch before the lever falls. Not from fear but from weight. A kind of tension that builds like thunder in your muscles. And then the trapdoor opens. Fast. Final. The drop isn't long, but it's enough. If you've done your math right, the neck breaks with a sound too soft for the crowd to hear, but loud enough to stay inside your skull. You flinch every time. You tell yourself not to. But the body jerks. The rope tightens. The legs shudder. And then stillness. You stand there for a few breaths after it's done. You don't move until the physician nods. You don't speak until the crowd begins to turn away. You walk down the steps, slower now. Each execution takes something from you, something you can't name. You feel it in your back, in your knees, in the corners of your eyes, like ash settling where light used to live. You untie the rope, lower the body. You don't look at the face. You never do. Not anymore. You fold the rope carefully. You wipe the wood. You do everything with the solemnity of a man cleaning his own grave. And when the day ends, and the crowd is gone, and the scaffold is empty, you sit on its edge. Just for a moment. You feel the evening wind on your cheeks. You listen to the boards beneath you. You close your eyes and imagine it didn't happen, that maybe the square was never filled, that maybe the rope was never tied. But you know better. You always know. This is your place now. Not in the town. Not in the church. Here, on these boards, beneath this beam, with your tools and your silence. The gallows is your chapel, your altar, your confession booth, and every creak beneath your boots is an amen that no one hears. You can swing an axe 1,000 times and still never be at peace with it. Each beheading demands more than strength, it demands precision, patience, a kind of cruel compassion. You've learned this the hard way. Your first was a disaster, too shallow a cut, too weak a grip, too slow a follow-through. You had to strike again, and again. The crowd flinched. So did you. Now you rehearse in silence. You practice not just with wood blocks, but in your mind, tracing the angle of the swing, measuring the distance between mercy and mess. When you raise the axe, it's not your muscles that do the work. It's your memory, your mistakes, your ghosts. Beheading is different from hanging. There's no mechanism, no rope to share the blame. It's just you and the blade. Your target, a neck small, precise, curved, like the stem of a flower. One mistake, and the head hangs by threads. The crowd sees that. They gasp. They murmur. They remember. And so do you. The sound of steel meeting bone wet, resistant, intimate etches itself into your thoughts long after the blood has dried. You try not to watch the head roll. You try not to hear it thud. But it always does. A sound more final than the fall of a hammer. You prepare each time like a soldier before battle. You check the edge. You test the handle. You lift the blade not just to feel its weight, but to feel your own breath shift under it. Too fast, and the cut splinters. Too slow, and the condemned lingers in pain. You've learned to find a rhythm in the horror, to steady your breath, to clear your mind. You stop seeing a man on his knees. You see a target, a line, a single act. It's not coldness. It's survival. Your humanity must be folded away for those few moments. Because if you falter, if your soul speaks louder than your blade, someone dies badly. You kneel beside them before it happens. One hand on their shoulder, It's not part of the ritual, but you do it every time. To steady them. To steady yourself. You've felt bones shiver beneath your grip. You've heard last words, muffled by fear or grace. Some pray. Some spit. Some say nothing at all. You listen without reacting. You cannot react. You lift the axe, and in that breathless moment, the world disappears. No crowd. No sky. No law. Just you and this irreversible moment. Then the blade falls. Fast. Intentional. Clean, if you're lucky. Not clean, if you're not. Either way, it's done. The aftermath is brutal in its simplicity. You wipe the blade on linen. You bow your head. You step back. The body is still. The head lies like an artifact, eyes open, mouth slack, sometimes still twitching. You don't stare. You've trained yourself not to, but you feel it. The presence of it. The wrongness of a person divided. The blood pools quickly, faster than you think it should. There's something about beheading that feels more intimate than any other death. Perhaps because the face remains. The identity remains. You've taken the soul, but left the shape. And it looks at you, even in death. The worst ones are the noblemen. Rich blood doesn't run cleaner, but it demands ceremony. You must bow. You must recite. You must wear the cleanest tunic, polish the blade till it shines. Sometimes they ask for favors. Don't let it hurt. Do it with dignity. Strike when I nod. You agree. You always agree. But you know the truth. No one controls their end. Not really. You've seen noble heads fall just like peasants. The blood smells the same. The muscle twitches the same. Death does not recognize title. Only tension. Only the final severing of thought from breath. You keep the axe in a separate place, wrapped in cloth, not because of superstition, but because it demands that much respect. You sharpen it by moonlight because that's the only time you can bear to. It gleams in the firelight like a question you don't want to answer. You've stopped counting how many necks it's kissed. You don't name them. You don't record them. But sometimes you remember the curve of a jaw, the curl of a lip, the eyes that closed too late. You carry those faces in silence, pressed into the folds of your mind like coins under cloth. They do not speak, but they wait. And when you lie in bed, the day long over, the blade wiped and hidden, the blood dried on the scaffold's wood, you feel it again. Not guilt, not quite. But weight. A heaviness behind the eyes. A pressure in the chest, as if your heart has learned to echo each fallen head, thudding once more in memory. You tell yourself it's duty. That precision is mercy. That a clean death is a kindness. And yet, every time you dream, you wake to the sound of a blade falling. Over and over. again and again. Not just on necks, but on the fragile cord that ties you to yourself. There's a different energy to executions by fire. The air feels heavier, hotter, even hours before the torch is lit. You sense it in the crowd. Their anticipation has a darker flavor. More hunger than justice. More ritual than punishment. They arrive early, families and strangers alike, and settle like flies on a carcass. You can feel their gaze, but you don't meet it. You're not here to entertain. You're here to end something. Fire demands preparation. The pyre must be dry, tightly stacked, laced with pitch and fat-soaked cloth. You build it like a carpenter builds a bed, firm, symmetrical, inescapable. Then you step back and wait for the condemned. Always barefoot, always tied, always trembling, even if they hide it well. Burnings are reserved for the unclean, the heretics, the witches, the deviants, the ones society wants not just dead but erased. It's not about killing. It's about making a statement. That's why the pyre is built in the center of town, not tucked away like a hanging or a beheading. Fire is the loudest death. It crackles, it roars, it dances in a way that mocks the silence of your other tools. You don't light the flame yourself. That honor usually falls to the priest or the magistrate. But you're the one who builds the stage. You're the one who binds the hands. You're the last face they see before the smoke takes their eyes. You try not to look as it starts. The first scream always finds you. Always. Even when you've stepped behind the cart or turned away. It's high-pitched, desperate, inhuman. You'd think you'd grow numb, but you don't. You steel yourself, yes. You prepare. But the sound still sinks in, wedges into your bones like splinters you'll never pull free. They scream until the smoke wins, until the air thickens with burning hair and flesh and cloth. The flames rise in chaotic, rhythmed, orange, yellow, black, and you wonder every time how much pain a body can feel before the soul flees. There's no clean line in a burning. It is not surgical like an axe. It is not sudden like a rope. It's chaos stretched thin. A person turning to ash in pieces. You've seen them thrash so hard they knock over parts of the pyre. You've seen bodies contort in shapes no living thing should bend. And when it ends, when the flames calm and the crowd thins, what remains is not a body. It's a shape in coal, ribs like melted iron, a jaw clenched in silent defiance. You stay behind to scatter the ash. You do it alone. Always. It's not out of ritual, it's out of decency. The priest won't touch it. The villagers pretend it isn't there. But someone must bury the smoke. Boilings are even rarer and somehow worse. Reserved for poisoners, betrayers, and those the nobles want to send a message through. The cauldron is iron. Huge, black. It takes hours to heat. You fill it with water or oil or even wine, depending on what point they want to make. The first time you were ordered to lower a man in, you vomited behind the tent before. The second time, you didn't. You still remember the sound skin separating, bubbling, the pop of joints loosening, the steam rising red. You remember thinking, this is not justice. This is cruelty disguised as warning. But still, you did it. You had to. There is no artistry in it. No calculation. Just heat. Just time. Just a death so prolonged that even the cruelest villagers look away. You're not asked to say anything. You're barely asked to stay. But you do. Because it's part of your duty. Because someone has to be there when a life ends, even this way. You mop the stone floor afterward. You clean the cauldron. You scrape away the last traces of a man who was, and who now only exists in a puddle of thick, sticky silence. You go home that night and sit by your fire, your hands raw from the scrub brush, your lungs still full of the stench. You dream of water, but it boils. The worst part is the crowd. Not just their numbers, but their faces. You've seen them bring picnics. You've seen children laugh. You've seen couples kiss as the flames rise. Sometimes you think you see disgust, pity. But more often you see hunger, a desire to witness something final, something they can't unsee. You wonder what that makes you not just the one who ends lives, but the one who enables the show. You never speak to the crowd, but they speak through silence. They want blood, fire, closure, and you give it to them. Because that's what you've been shaped to do. After a burning, the square smells of death for days. The wind carries it into the cracks of homes, into the wool of shirts, into the dreams of those who claim to be innocent. You wonder if they smell it and remember, or if they forget, if they close their shutters, say a prayer, and move on. You can't. You carry the smell on your tongue. You wake with it lodged in your throat like soot. You sweep the ashes with bare hands because gloves don't help. The heat lingers in your fingertips like guilt. And no matter how much water you pour over the scorched stone, the black mark never fully fades. And when you finally sleep, when your body surrenders to exhaustion, you dream not of fire, but of silence. A silence thick with smoke, with the outline of faces burned into the dark. You see hands reaching, not accusing, but pleading. You don't wake screaming. You wake breathless, empty, and you stare at the ceiling, wondering how long before the next torch is lit. Before another person is turned into a warning. You don't cry. You haven't in years, but some nights the embers of memory glow so hot in your chest, it feels like you're burning too. You wash your hands after every execution. You scrub until the skin reddens, until your knuckles split from the water, until the sting reminds you that you're still alive. You change tunics. You burn the cloth if too much blood has soaked through. You clean the axe, the rope, the gallows floor. You wash until everything looks new again. But you know it's not, because the blood is not in the fibers. It's in the gaze of others. In the way the town looks at you even when you're clean, especially when you're clean, like a wolf who's just bathed after the kill. You walk through the village and still feel it, the mark, invisible but unmistakable. The children stop their games. The mothers pull them close. And you keep your head down, as if shame has become part of your posture. There are no friends. Not real ones. People speak to you when they must. A butcher might nod. A blacksmith might offer a price without cruelty. But no one lingers. No one asks how your day was. No one offers you their bread or their wine. You eat alone. Always. You celebrate nothing. No one invites you to weddings. You've never held a newborn, never been asked to bless a house or light a candle. You are not cursed, not quite. But you are avoided like a bad omen. Like something that might bring death even when it brings bread. You once tried to give an old woman directions on the road. She spat at your feet. At church, you sit at the back. Always. You arrive last, leave first. The priest doesn't call you by name when he blesses the flock. He says, "All of us," and looks just slightly over your head. You don't expect a sermon to be about you. But you do wish, sometimes, that someone would meet your eyes during the peace. Shake your hand without recoiling. You try not to take the host with stained fingers. You try not to breathe too loud when kneeling. You try, in every way, to become invisible inside a room where God is supposed to see everyone. And yet, when you walk back down the nave, the whispers trail behind like dying prayers. You don't try to court anyone anymore. You did once. You were young then, still thinking you could outrun the name they gave you. You brought her flowers, simple ones, wild but lovely. She smiled, took them, didn't say no. Not at first. But the next morning, the petals were on your doorstep, crushed. No note. Just silence. A silence that grew louder every time you passed her father's shop. You told yourself you didn't care, that it was for the best. But that night, you sat by your hearth for hours, holding the stem of the last flower like a broken arrow, wondering if love was something only clean men deserved. You stopped talking to mirrors after that. What would be the point? You know what's reflected there. Not the axe or the hood, but the after-image of those things. The man who wears them even when stripped bare. You tried once to grow a beard to hide the recognition. It didn't help. You tried to smile more. That made it worse. People hate the idea of a joyful executioner. They want you sad, serious, silent. Anything else is too confusing. So now, when you go to market, you speak only in short phrases. You buy what you need. You leave early. If someone bumps into you, you apologize before they do, even if they were the one at fault. You began talking to birds, not because you're mad, but because they don't flinch. They don't judge. They take the seeds from your palm and flutter off without a second glance. You envy that freedom, that lack of memory, that ability to take without asking questions. In the winter, you build them little shelters in the woods near your house. In spring, you watch them nest in the thatch. It's the closest thing you have to company. You named one of them once. A mistake. She didn't come back the next year. You buried the thought like you bury the rest. Sometimes strangers pass through town. Travelers, traders, performers. They speak to you as if you were anyone else. They ask directions. They compliment your firewood stack. They joke about the weather. And for those brief minutes, you are human again. Until someone whispers, points, warns them. Then the air changes. The kindness fades. And you become the quiet again. You don't blame them. You're used to it. But each time it cuts. Small, sure, unseen. Like a paper slice across the soul. And you wonder how many more cuts can a person take before they stop feeling altogether. And yet, despite the loneliness, you stay. You don't run. You don't disappear into the forest. You keep living. Because someone must. Because despite what they think, despite the silence and the stares, despite the distance they place between you and their world, you are still a man. A man with tired hands and an aching back and a heart that beats, even if only to remind you of its weight. The blood doesn't wash off. Not really. But you keep washing anyway. You keep hoping. You keep breathing. Because not even a stained soul forgets how to long for light. You don't talk about the mistakes. No executioner does. But they live with you. They follow you like shadows that never need light. No one trains you for failure. No one prepares you for the moment your hand slips, or the rope snaps, or the blade strikes wrong. But it happens. And when it does, it stays etched in memory, like a burn that won't scab. The first time you botched a hanging, the condemned man kicked for far too long. His neck didn't break. The rope stretched. His feet danced above the trapdoor like some grotesque theatre, and the crowd gasped, then turned cruel. Some laughed. Some shouted. A child cried. But worst of all was the silence that followed, the long, crawling silence as you climbed the scaffold again to end what should have ended already. You never forget how heavy a body feels when it's alive and struggling. You never forget the feeling of rope cutting into your gloves as you tried to fix the knot mid-death. Or the eyes of the magistrate, watching with discomfort, pretending not to judge, pretending it was all just technical difficulty. Later that night, no one comforted you. No one cared. The man was dead, and that was what mattered. But you knew the truth, you had failed. Not just him, but yourself. Because even in death, there is a right way to do things. A clean way. And you hadn't done it. Beheadings, too, are unforgiving. The axe is cruel in the hands of hesitation. One swing too soft, and you're forced to lift it again. The sound it makes the second time bone giving in, skin resisting haunts you. You can still remember that one face, lips moving as the head clung on by a thin line of muscle. You had to pull it loose. The crowd turned away. Someone vomited. That night, a stone was thrown at your house. A window shattered. You found a note tucked in the splinters. Do it better. That was the only feedback you'd ever received. Not gratitude. Not forgiveness. Just a demand for perfection, scribbled in fear. The crowd never forgives a messy death. They don't understand that even the cleanest tools can slip, that muscles fail, that timing betrays you. They want their justice clean, spectacular, digestible. When it's not, they turn on you. They don't blame the wind, or the prisoner's weight, or the faulty rope sent by the town. They blame you. The man with the blade, the hand that failed. And their hatred isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet doors that don't open, eyes that refuse to meet yours, bread sold at double price. Sometimes it's worse taunts from boys with too much freedom, drunk men daring you to show them what the axe really feels like. You never respond. You can't afford to. You've learned to double-check everything. Triple-check. You visit the scaffold at night, alone, muttering to the boards like a man begging a ship not to sink. You measure the drop twice. You test the rope's strain with sacks of grain. You sharpen the axe until it shines like water. And still, there is fear. Not of death, but of failure, of another soul dragged through suffering because your hands weren't steady enough. You pray before each execution now, not to save the condemned, but to ask for precision, a clean stroke, a clean end. Nothing more. You don't ask for peace anymore. You know better. But even the best plans fail. Once, during a winter hanging, the platform froze. The trapdoor stuck. The man stood there, noose tight, eyes wide, as you tried to unjam the lever. The wind howled like a warning. The crowd grew restless. Some started to chant, others threw stones. You don't know what broke first, the door or your spirit. But when he finally dropped, it felt more like collapse than execution. You didn't sleep that night, or the one after. For weeks, you dreamt of frozen wood and unmoving rope, of the man's breath fogging in the cold, of the crowd turning to ice around you. There are moments when you question everything. After a botched job, when your hands won't stop shaking, when the blood won't scrub out, no matter how hard you try, you wonder what it's all for. Whether any of this is worth it. Whether justice ever needed your hands in the first place. But those are dangerous thoughts. Thoughts that could unmake a man. So you bury them. Deep. Beneath habit. Beneath silence. Beneath the cold comfort of knowing you'll do better next time. Because you must. Because no one else will. Because, despite it all, you still believe a clean death is better than a slow one. And that belief is the last light you have. So you return to the scaffold. You oil the hinges. You polish the blade. You run your fingers across the trapdoor seam. You speak softly to the wind, asking it to be still. And when the crowd gathers again expectant, wide-eyed, hungry, you step into your place. You breathe. You nod. You do the job. And you pray the wood doesn't creak too soon. You pray the rope holds. You pray the axe does what it was made for. Because when it doesn't, it's not just the condemned who suffer. It's you. Every time. All over again. They pay you in coins. Not many. Just enough to live, but never enough to feel like you belong. A small purse after every execution. Sometimes a few extra coppers for difficult cases nobles who required ceremony, burnings that took hours, bodies that needed tidying. Once they offered you a goat. Another time a cask of spoiled ale. You didn't refuse. You can't afford to. The town keeps you alive, but only just. As if they want you functional, not comfortable. Useful, not human. Your hut remains small, your boots worn through at the soles, your larder never full. And yet, you never complain. Because you've learned something most men don't, you can be paid and still be poor. Rich in coins. Bankrupt in peace. The law grants you certain privileges. You're allowed to take the clothes of the condemned. Their belongings. Leftover bread, worn belts, even rings. Some you keep. Most you bury. You tried wearing a tunic, unsee fine blue thing, taken from a thief. People stared harder than usual. You took it off before the sun went down. You keep their things in a chest now. Not for value. For silence. Because no one else will remember them. And you'd, spite what they think do. You remember. You always do. There are other perks, if you can call them that. Sometimes, when land is abandoned when a man dies, without heirs they offer it to you first. But it's never good land. Rocky, distant, cursed by rumour. You've been offered homes with blood still on the walls. You declined politely. You're not superstitious. But some walls groan in ways that don't come from age. And you don't need more ghosts. You have plenty already. They don't pay you for the burden, for the stairs, for the way your presence empties a room. Those costs are invisible, and they're the ones that hurt the most. The townspeople assume you don't feel it. They think you're hardened, that your conscience went numb long ago. But the truth is, cruel are you, feel everything, too much, too often. Each job takes something. A thread from your spirit, a breath from your chest. No one talks about the weight of repetition, of burying names beneath silence. You carry it home, in your shoulders, in your eyes, in your dreams. And the coins they give you? They don't buy sleep. They don't buy forgiveness. They just remind you that your hands have a price. And every time you count them, you remember what they cost. You tried to save once. Thought maybe you'd leave. Build a life somewhere else. But where would you go? Another village? Another name? The moment they asked what you do, it would begin again. They'd see it in your walk, in your calloused grip. And even if they didn't, they'd find out eventually. The world is smaller than people think. And shame travels faster than horses. So the coins stay in a jar you never spend, like a monument to the life you'll never live. A pile of copper dreams gathering dust. Once, a nobleman asked how much you charged for a quiet job, no crowd, no spectacle, just steel in a cellar. You said no. Not because of principle you've lost those long ago, but because you knew what it meant. It wasn't justice. It was convenience. Assassination dressed up as legality. And you still believe in rules, even as the world bends them, breaks them. You hold on, because if you don't, what are you? Not a servant of the law, just a man with an axe. And that thought terrifies you more than the work ever has. The cost isn't just internal. You age faster. Your back aches from scaffold steps. Your knees click like gallows hinges. Your fingers don't straighten all the way anymore. You've lost teeth to winter infections, gone blind in one eye from a rope that snapped too soon. No one covers your wounds. There is no pension, no gratitude. Only the next name on the list. The next crowd. The next nod. The town doesn't want you to die, but they won't help you live. They just assume you'll keep showing up. Until one day, you don't. And when that day comes when your axe is too heavy, when your hands won't tie knots, you wonder what they'll do. Will they mourn you? Will they remember your service? Or just find someone new? A younger man? A quieter one? One who hasn't yet begun to rot from the inside? You hope foolishly that someone will light a candle, that someone will say, "He did his duty." You won't be buried in the churchyard. You've accepted that. But maybe, just maybe, they'll place a stone somewhere. Not for who you were, but for what you carried, for what you lost, for what no one else was willing to hold. They visit you at night, not in cloaks or with torches, not with chains or rattling breath, just faces. Quiet, unblinking. Sometimes they're whole. Sometimes they're broken, missing the parts you took. A jaw askew. A neck bent at the wrong angle. but always looking. Never angry. Just there. Watching you. You lie still under your blanket, the fire reduced to embers, and feel them gathering in the corners of the room. The air doesn't chill. Your skin doesn't crawl. It's worse than that. It feels familiar. Like returning to a room where someone once died. And you are both the mourner and the cause. Their voices don't speak in words. They sigh. They murmur without moving their lips. And yet, you understand them. They ask questions you don't have answers for. Why me? Did it have to be this way? Did you know I was innocent? You want to scream that it wasn't your choice, that you were just the hand, not the mind, not the law. But your mouth stays closed. You know they wouldn't listen, because you wouldn't either. The dead have no need for explanations. They seek acknowledgement, to be seen once more. And so you let them stay. Night after night. Watching. Some nights it's just one of them. A girl barely grown. Accused of theft, though you remember the magistrate's face when he said the words. Uncertain. Regretful. She went quietly. She didn't cry. But now she visits most often. Sits at the edge of your bed like a shadow in the shape of sorrow. Doesn't blink. Doesn't breathe. You wake with her image burned behind your eyes. You can't remember her name. Only her eyes. Green, maybe. Or blue. You're not sure anymore. But they held more questions than you've ever had answers. And you carry them now, like stones in your lungs. Others follow. The one who sang on the scaffold. The one who spat at your feet. The one who whispered, "Thank you," before the blade fell. You didn't understand that one. Still don't. Did he mean it? Was it sarcasm? Or something deeper? Did he think you were freeing him? That death was better than the cage? The ambiguity gnaws at you more than guilt. You can live with guilt, it's familiar, almost comforting. But not knowing, not understanding, that's the ache that doesn't scab. That's the whisper that keeps you up, even when your bones beg for rest. You've tried to make peace. You've left flowers where the scaffold stands. Burned herbs to cleanse the space. You asked the priest, once, if prayers for the dead count when said by the hand that killed them. He didn't answer. Just stared at your gloves. Said nothing. You took that as a no, so you pray in your own way now. Quietly, with gestures, with care. You tie knots slower. You oil the blade longer. You bury the ashes with your own hands. You call it ritual, but really, it's apology. In small, careful pieces, even if no one hears them. Especially if no one hears them. Daylight doesn't bring relief. The memories follow you into market stalls and firewood stacks. You see someone with the same eyes, the same jawline, the same hesitation in their walk. And for a second, You're sure it's them returned, reborn, real. But it never is. Just echoes. You nod, smile, walk faster. Pretend you didn't see what you saw. Pretend your mind isn't cataloguing every step you take in case it's your last moment of peace before another execution, another face, another ghost. You've begun talking to them, not in the way madmen do, loud and ranting. Just softly. A sentence here. A thought whispered to the wind. I didn't mean for it to be that way. You were brave. I hope your family forgave you. You don't expect answers. But the silence afterward feels different. Less hostile. Almost warm. You wonder if forgiveness from the dead is the only kind you'll ever know. And if it is, does that make it enough? And so each night, before the fire dims, you leave space beside your bed. You fold the blanket neatly at the foot. You clean the axe even when it hasn't been used. You light a candle note for light, but for presence. A small flame to remind you that what you've done lives on, that the faces will come again, and you will greet them. You will remember them, because forgetting would be worse than guilt. It would mean they truly died. And you, more than anyone, know the cost of forgetting. You live with its echo, and its shadow sleeps beside you. You were born into this, not by choice, not by calling, but by the quiet understanding passed from father to son. The tools waited before you ever touched them. The rope hung in the shed long before you learned how to tie a knot. Your father's hands were already stained before yours even knew how to hold a spoon. He never spoke much of it. He didn't have to. It hung in the way he walked, in the way neighbours stopped talking when he entered a room. You remember him sitting alone at the table, one candle between him and the dark. Not reading, not praying, just waiting for the night to pass. You didn't understand then. You do now. Your mother tried to protect you from it. Gave you books, taught you to plant herbs, told you bedtime stories with no gallows, no blades. But you saw the way she flinched when your father oiled the axe, the way she scrubbed your clothes harder when you'd helped with the scaffold. She never said it, but she knew you'd inherit the work, just like your father did, just like his father before him. Execution isn't just a profession, it's a bloodline. And like all bloodlines, it stains deeper the longer it flows. When you were young, you thought you could escape. You tried learning a trade cobbler, briefly. Helped a mason one summer. You dreamed of roads, of leaving, of forgetting the house on the edge of town. But when your father took ill, when the town still needed someone to swing the blade, you felt it settle on your shoulders. Not obligation. Expectation. And when he died, they came not with condolences, but with the next name. They handed it to you like bread, warm and heavy. You didn't cry at his funeral. You were already becoming the man they needed. Not a son. A shadow. And now you wonder what your children, if you ever have them would inherit. Not land, not love, but shame. You picture a little boy with your eyes and your silence, sitting at a table no one visits, learning how to tie a knot not for boats, but for necks. What would you tell him? That the work is necessary? That someone must do it? Would you hand him the axe the way your father did quietly, with the kind of gaze that makes no space for joy? Or would you break the line? Would you let the tools rust and tell him to run? But even if you did, would the village let him go? They know your name. They know your blood. They whisper it like a curse. You've seen it before. A cousin who tried to marry. A sister who moved 2 towns over. The moment someone traced their family line, the doors began to shut. The whispers grew legs. Executioner's kin. As if the shame was contagious. As if death ran through your veins like ink through paper. You're not sure which is crueler, the job itself, or the knowledge that it outlives you, passed on in secret glances and second-hand disgust. Sometimes you wonder about your ancestors. Who was the first? What man took the axe not with fear, but with pride? Did he see it as justice? As divine work? Or was he, too, just cornered by circumstance? You like to think he meant well, that maybe, once, the role was something else. Honoured, needed. But time grinds everything down, turns titles into burdens, turns a family into a line of unspoken grief. You trace their names sometimes, scratched into old ledgers. None of them left letters, just deaths, just records, just silence. There are moments, small ones, when you try to imagine a different life. One where your name isn't heavy. One where your hands are known for building, not ending. You picture a kitchen full of laughter. A daughter braiding hair, not hiding her face. A wife who doesn't turn away from your touch. These dreams are soft, fragile. You don't let them stay long, but they come anyway. And each time they leave, they take something with them. A breath, a heartbeat, a hope. You get used to the loss. You have to. And so, you walk the path your father did. You clean the tools he left behind. You live in the same house, sleep in the same bed, wake with the same ache in your bones. And when you pass the old mirror by the hearth, you sometimes see his reflection in yours. Not just in the eyes, or the jaw, but in the stillness. The weariness. The quiet knowing that this work, this life, this chesed did not begin with you. And it will not end with you. Unless you find the strength to lay it down. You stopped being a person the day they stopped saying your name. Now, you are only the role. The executioner. Not a man, but a shape. A task. A necessity. They speak around you, never to you. They describe you in gestures, in euphemisms, in lowered voices. Even the magistrate avoids direct eye contact. Even the priest forgets to bless you by name. You begin to feel as though your soul has stepped out of your body and now watches from a distance as you perform the motions of justice. You swing the axe. You knot the rope. You carry out the sentence. But you are not you. Not anymore. You have become a thing. A dark extension of the law's will. A symbol of finality. It's not that you're hated. Hatred would be simpler. Hatred acknowledges you exist. No, you are ignored. Dismissed. Avoided. You walk into a room and the air thickens not with fear but with discomfort. With the shame of knowing justice requires a hand, and that hand is yours. You were once a child in this village, ran its fields, drank from its streams, scraped your knees on its stones. Now, they step away from you in the market square, as if your shadow might stain them. You wonder, often, when exactly you disappeared. When the man became a mask. When the boy became the blade. You try to remember your face sometimes. Not the one in the mirror, but the one before all this. Before the hoods, the blood, the titles. It's hard. Faces blur when you wear none of your own. The anonymity was supposed to protect you. That's what they always said. Don't take the hood off. They won't know it's you, but they always knew. They always know. The anonymity doesn't protect. It erases. You walk with a voice that no longer feels like yours. Hands that move because they must. Even your thoughts begin to slow, trimmed to fit the narrow lane they've given you. Doubt becomes dangerous. Feeling becomes noise. And so, you become what they want, silent, sharp, dependable. Somewhere along the way, you became a function, like a bell tower that rings the hour, like a door that always opens when pushed. No one asks the bell if it mourns. No one asks the door if it dreams. And no one asks you if it hurts. You are a mechanism, a tool, a necessary evil in human shape. And the longer you live this way, the more you begin to wonder if they were right to make you this. If maybe, deep down, you are only what you are used for. Not a soul, but a service. Not a mind, but emotion. Not a man, but a means. The worst part is, you've begun to believe it. You speak less. You eat alone, not out of rejection, but out of routine. You don't miss laughter. You don't remember touch. You watch the sky shift, the seasons turn, and feel nothing. Not peace. Not sorrow. Just stillness. You sharpen the axe without thinking. You tie the noose with your eyes half closed. It's muscle memory now. A dance performed by a dancer long dead inside. You nod at the magistrate's orders, listen to the priest's prayers, and then take the stage. No applause. No curtain call. Just wood and rope and breath that ends in your hands. And yet, sometimes, A crack forms. Small. Sudden. A child waves at you by mistake. A drunk slurs your name with something that almost sounds like respect. A dying prisoner says, "Thank you for making it quick." And for a second, the armor slips. You remember that beneath all of this, beneath the layers of duty and silence and function, you are still human. Still hurting. Still hoping for something softer. The realization doesn't bring relief. It brings pain. Because now you must carry not only your task, but the aching knowledge that you are more than it. And that you can never show it. There's a comfort in numbness, a safety in surrender. But the cost is steep. You no longer write. You no longer sing. You no longer wonder what the stars mean or how the rain feels in summer. The soul needs softness to survive. And you have been hardened past recognition. And yet, deep within the walls you've built, something remains. A flicker. A memory. A name. Your name. The one they stopped saying. The one you stopped saying. It waits. Not loudly, but faithfully. And sometimes, in the quiet hours before dawn, when the fire's gone cold and even the ghosts are sleeping, you whisper it into your palm. Just once. Just to remember, you were never just the axe. You are not evil. You are not good. You are the instrument they needed. The hand they could not admit belonged to someone. You are the blade they turned their backs on as it fell. But still, you are a person. And that matters even if only to you. One day, this will end. The job, the title, the silence, and someone new will take the hood, will feel the weight. And perhaps, just perhaps, they'll remember that before justice becomes ritual, before death becomes routine, there is always a human hand holding the rope. A name inside the mask. A soul inside the sentence. It ends not with a ceremony, but with silence. One morning, your hands no longer rise with the same strength. Your knees creak louder than the gallows. The axe feels heavier, even though its weight hasn't changed. The magistrate sees it in your shoulders, the sag in your spine. He nods, without saying it aloud. It's time. No farewell. No speech. Just a quiet acknowledgement that the body has reached its end before the blade did. You set down the tools. You close the chest where the ropes are kept. You oil the axe one last time, not out of duty, but respect. And then you place it beneath the floorboards and walk away. Slowly, as if your limbs don't quite believe it's over. No one comes to thank you. That was never part of the job. But they notice. The village feels different without the presence at its edge. Children play a little closer to your hut now. The baker forgets to overcharge you. Even the priest pauses when you pass him in the chapel aisle, nodding slightly, as if unsure what you are now. Without the title, without the hood, without the weight of justice pulling at your shadow, you are not the executioner anymore. And yet, you still carry him. In your posture, in your stillness, in your hands that don't know what to do when they aren't ending something. You spend more time by the river now, watching the way water moves around stones, never judging them, never stopping, just flowing. You try to imagine what a life feels like when it isn't divided into names and knots and final moments. It's difficult. There's a kind of echo in you now, like your soul still listens for the toll of the town bell, still braces for the next sentence to be passed. But the bell doesn't ring for you anymore, and for the first time you begin to hear other sounds instead. The crunch of gravel beneath boots, the way wind rattles in dry trees, the song of a bird you don't know the name of. Sometimes the dreams come less often. The faces blur. The names become soft-edged. Not forgotten, but distant. And you no longer wake with the same start, the same clutch in your chest. Instead, you rise slowly. Light a fire. Make tea. Sit in the quiet. You don't speak aloud anymore. The house hears you. That's enough. You begin writing again. Small things. Observations. A memory of snow. The shape of a cloud. It doesn't feel like redemption, and it's not meant to. But it feels like breath, like the air returning to a room long sealed shut. One day, you take the axe out again, not for use, just to look. The blade has dulled with time. The handle is worn smooth by decades of your grip. You run your fingers along the steel, and for the first time, it doesn't feel like a weapon. It feels like a story. A chapter that has ended. You wrap it in cloth, dig a small hole beneath the tree behind your hut, and bury it. Not as a shame, but as a ritual, as closure. You don't mark the grave. The tree is enough. Let the roots remember. Let the earth carry what you no longer need. In the final years, you are quieter still. The villagers pass you without flinching. Some nod. One even offers you an apple once, smiling awkwardly. You take it. Say thank you. And in that exchange, something inside you breathes. Not forgiveness. Not restoration. Just space. Space to exist again. Not as a symbol. Not as a sentence. But as a man. You tend your garden. You mend your roof. You hum to yourself when the wind is soft enough to carry the tune away. The ghosts visit less, not because they've left, but because they've settled. They know you remember, and that is enough. You never marry, never have children. The line ends with you, and in that there is peace. The shame does not pass on. The hood remains folded. The axe sleeps beneath the tree. You think often of your father in those final days. How tired his eyes were. How heavy his silence felt. You hope quietly, fiercely that you are the last to bear it. That the village will find other hands, softer tools, better ways. You don't expect it, but you allow yourself the hope. And when your final breath comes, it is not dramatic. You are not in your bed. You are in the field, sitting beneath the tree, watching the wind pass through the grass. You close your eyes, feel the sun on your face, and let go. No crowd, no judgment, no bell, just stillness. And when they find you, they do not move you right away. The villagers stand in a ring, silent. Some take off their hats. One kneels to close your eyes. And someone, no one knows who, carves a single word into the tree's bark above the roots: mercy.